Hey, good morning. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This is the Wednesday, August 17th meeting of the COGCC. We will start with a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Bowe, Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner McGowan,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath, Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 out of 7 commissioners present today.
Great. Good to see everybody. Welcome to our stakeholders. We've got some 43 with us, which is great. We have a somewhat short agenda this morning. We will start with commissioner comments. Does any commissioner have comments for the rest of us? Commissioner McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just letting folks know that yesterday I met with the CDPHE Environmental Justice. What does the A stand for? Task Force. We're working on equity issues and environmental justice issues, and I gave a presentation to their sub-task force on cumulative impacts and the rules that we have as a commission, how we address cumulative impacts, because they're tackling that issue as part of their work.
How did that go?
It was a really good discussion. I mean, I think they're trying to figure out, I think, a bigger picture than the picture we have, right? We specialize in oil and gas, or that's our authority, that's our sandbox, and they're taking a broader view. And so we did have a discussion of hopefully the importance of recognizing that some agencies have started work on environmental justice and health equity issues, and that some of our cumulative impact work hopefully is something that they could look at and use as part of their recommendations to the legislature. I think we've put in some good work with stakeholders on how we're looking at cumulative impact. So hopefully that conversation with them was helpful, and they can see some of the work that we've done as a commission and maybe springboard off of it or borrow some of the tools that we've used.
Great. Thanks for running lead on that, Commissioner McGowan. Other commissioners with comments? All right, seeing none, we will roll into consent agenda. Does any commissioner have questions with regard to consent? Seeing no questions, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving through our docket, we now have a West Slope Task Force report from Deputy Director Cuthbert. Saw that he was with us earlier.
Good morning, Chair. I missed your intro as I was being elevated to panelist. Are you ready for me?
We are ready for you, and I believe maybe you have Mr. Hines as well.
Yeah, Chris Hines should be here. I see him on the screen. Chris, maybe you could turn your camera on if you have the bandwidth. There you are. So thank you, commissioners. I'm here to report back on something this commission initiated in January at a hearing. Before I begin, I just want to introduce Chris Hines, as he will be co-presenting with me. This will be pretty quickly, but we want to just walk through the framework that we've crafted in response to directions that you gave in January. And then there are 2 action items from that hearing that we would ask you to consider at the close of our presentation. One is to affirm the framework that we've created as meeting the intention of the directions provided in that January hearing. And then secondly, to assign a commissioner as liaison to the task force. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. Let me start by introducing Chris Hines. Mr. Hines is a graduate of Colorado State University's Warner College of Natural Resources and a Western Colorado native. He is an environmental professional and business owner with nearly 20 years of oil and gas experience, whose greatest successes have been building and maintaining large, collaborative, multidisciplinary teams built to manage large-scale programs. And as you'll recall, or maybe you'll recall, in the hearing in January, one of the directions that the commission gave was for the operator who was the subject of that hearing to retain the services of a consultant to facilitate the conversation between COGC staff and West Slope operators. And so Mr. Hines is that consultant that's been selected. I have met with him a couple of times, and I'm excited to get to work with him. So maybe the next thing I could do is if I could share my screen, I will just quickly walk through the framework. Can you see my framework screen now?
We can.
Okay, so the framework's pretty straightforward. You know, the purpose is to try to help resolve conflict or just differences of understanding regarding a number of issues. We anticipate the duration of the task force to be about 18 months. We've identified these 6 issues as the skeleton framework to start the conversation. And I think they're all really good issues. These were developed in conjunction with West Slope operators and Mr. Hines, and you can read them. And I believe that hearings manager Larson provided this to the commissioners. Is that correct? I hope that's correct. So maybe you have your own copy to make notes on or to follow along if I go too quickly. But these are the issues that will begin to the discussion around. In terms of roles, as I mentioned, we're looking for a commissioner to lead the task force that will be up to the commission to decide maybe today. And then to attend those meetings every couple of months to get a report, and then quarterly to provide updates back to the whole commission regarding our progress. I, as deputy director, have the responsibility to lead COGCC's participation with key unit managers and unit staff as we identify specific issues. For specific meetings, we'll be bringing different people, to the conversation. And I will obviously attend the monthly task force meetings and then coordinate with the commissioner. Mr. Hines, as I mentioned, is representing the West Slope, or at least coordinating and facilitating the conversation with the West Slope operators. And I'll ask him to just give you an update on what he's done in just a second. And then participants, it's open to any of the West Slope operators who want to participate. I did give a preview of this framework to the West Slope COGA operators meeting the first week of August when I was there at my every other month meeting with them, and got some really good feedback. And I hope that it was really came across well, and was I think it did come across well, and everybody's really excited to get this started. I think the place we're at now, let me turn over to Chris and see how he wants to augment what I've said. Chris.
Hello, commissioners, other stakeholders. I am very excited for the opportunity to participate in this effort and bring my experience to looking for some practical solutions. As far as status, I've had some conversations with West Slope COGA about coordinating existing meetings that they have, identifying venues, and getting an initial meeting with operators and just identifying interested parties to this effort. Expecting to have something on the calendar here the end of this month, start of September, to initiate the process.
Thanks, Chris. So with that, I believe that concludes our presentation, Chair, and we would just look for the commission's comments or affirmation as to our efforts here to meet the expectations of the hearing directions from January, and then perhaps get a commissioner assigned as liaison.
Thank you for the presentation. I had an initial question. At first, with regard to Mr. Hines, sounds like he's kind of a third-party consultant representing the West Slope folks. Are the West Slope operators paying for his involvement? And can you provide some additional details, either one of you, about that?
That's correct. I have, through West Slope COGA, anticipate billing through them and having members of that organization pay for my time.
Okay. And then that list of issues that is up here are kind of, we've got the West Slope operators, and then there's our staff. Are both sides have both sides vetted the list of issues, or both sides in agreement this is the appropriate set of issues? Are both sides have the opportunity to add to or take away from the list? Kind of what's the setup on that regard?
Chris, I'll let you go first if you want.
Yeah, my understanding is the issues and just the general scope of that framework kind of developed through a series of conversations with Scott and also with operators. It is in line with everything I've heard discussed about what this effort would look like, and what the scope of the collaboration is sort of expected to be.
And I would just report, Chair, that, we had a conversation, it's a couple of months ago now, talking about how to get this initiated. And I indicated to you that there were a number of meetings that I wanted to have internally with staff to just get their input, to identify, to expose the framework, to expose the idea. I think staff is excited to get the opportunity to be involved in this effort. I think it comports with their perception of effective governance. And so I believe they are, like I said, looking forward to this opportunity. And as far as issues, this is the skeleton. We are, I think that we feel some liberty to pursue whatever it is that the task force identifies kind of as we go. But we felt like this was a really good skeleton of issues to initiate the conversation, and then and hopefully resolve at least this skeleton set of issues. And then if there are others that are identified as we go, I would be hopeful that we could also address that as well.
That's very much my hope as well, that this will be an evolving process.
Oh, I think I get more comfortable if everyone acknowledges up front that this is an evolutionary sort of thing, and this is kind of the first identified set of areas in which there will be work, but that everyone agrees that there may be other areas that are uncovered. There's a lot of time and history here, and I want everyone to feel comfortable when they're at the table that this is not sort of it. There may be other areas that deserve attention. And so as long as everybody's comfortable that this is kind of the starting point, and that it kicks it off, that other, areas may be defined, then I feel more comfortable with that. So just with that kind of caveat, in fact, you might even replace the term issues with, like, on the document, kind of initially identified issues or something like that, so that everyone understands that this can evolve. And then we're, at a good spot at the beginning, knowing that as you move through this, other areas may be identified. I saw Commissioner McGowan had raised her hand at the beginning, and I apologize for taking over the mic, but please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad you set the stage. So I have one nitpicky comment just to start off with, and I'm wondering if we could change the language. I think it's under the soil issues where it says that we're using guidance against operators, and that feels inflammatory to me. I'm guessing staff feels like they're using it for compliance guidance. Can we change the language there to be a little more neutral?
I missed that, Commissioner McGowan. Thank you.
Thank you. So the other part that I'm curious about, I really like this document. I think it covers a lot of things that we've heard from operators when we went on our tour, when we had some compliance issues come in front of the commission. So I'm super appreciative of how this got put together. I'm very interested in making sure that there's a commissioner helping with this work so that we have kind of this liaison with the commission and the work that's being done. I was curious about the only meeting quarterly with a commissioner as like a check-in versus the commissioner actively participating, which I think might be more helpful, so that a commissioner can really kind of understand, compliance when we're talking about some things that feel subjective, even though you're trying to make it very consistent so that whoever does the inspection, you get the same outcome. When we're looking at things like, is the vegetation, has it come back 80% to where it was before, it can feel kind of subjective. And I think it might benefit a commissioner to be a part of those conversations of like what operators are struggling with and what they're seeing and what staff is struggling with and what they're seeing to try to figure out avenues for solutions, and then representative with the commission and helping explain things. So I'm wondering if, I think I read that you were concerned that there might be a conflict of interest if we had to vote on recommendations or something. And we've had commissioners participate in other work groups and not been concerned about that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and why you were thinking that the commissioner would only like meet quarterly instead of being an active participant.
I guess I was under the impression that was the guidance that was provided in the hearing. I'll have to go back and check that. That was developed in this document very early on, and I don't remember why exactly it was crafted that way.
It could be my bad memory too, Mr. Cuthbertson. So sorry. It could.
No, it's okay. I just don't recall now what the specific direction was from the commission, from that hearing, but that was my perception as the basis for this. I'm not wedded to it in any form. I'm happy to amend it.
What if so I recall, memory is distant, there was some discussion around that, but I think rather than sort of define it in stone, just as we also just undefined the issue list in stone and allowed it to be evolving, since this is kind of a evolutionary sort of approach, what if we got rid of the mandatory every 2 months sort of thing and just instead reframe the document that the commissioner will attend, as much as possible, but, cognizant of attendance not placing commissioner in a spot where, recusals need to take place. I mean, something like that. And then as we move through this process and see how it evolves, I'm sorry, I've used the term evolve, but we can, reframe it a little bit. But I appreciate the point Commissioner McGowan is taking, is that, we kind of want the commissioner to be involved as much as possible. Provided that involvement does not end up, with, tons of recusals on variances or other things of that sort.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it is still my computer, but sometimes you're coming in and out for me. And if it's me, I'll jump off and get back on.
Me as well, Commissioner McGowan.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happened. I've got the mic literally in my face at this point. So I'll try to keep it there. Thank you. Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Hines and Mr. Cuthbertson for putting this initial framework together and having the initial conversations around this. I do think this is an important topic and one that has been brewing for some time. And, you know, I agree with Commissioner McGowan. I think that a commissioner role in this process, you know, is to help in that facilitation of the conversation. As I look through that list of issues, I mean, it really appears that there's the majority of those conflicts is a communication issue or a clarity issue or refining and understanding of what expectations are. And, you know, I think a commissioner does allow that is able to facilitate that conversation in a way that I think can be really helpful. And understanding that, I think that we've got an initial list of issues to discuss in this document. I wonder if there was any discussion around what the outcome would be of this task force. Are we, and I imagine it depends on the issues that come up, but are we looking at more clarity around guidance? Are we looking at perhaps some policy or rule adjustments, or what are we looking at for an outcome of this from your initial perspective here, or is that still wide open for the task force to determine?
I think it is all of the above kind of a response without trying to be cute about it, Commissioner Messner. But having said that, we do have it, you know, this has been an ongoing conversation. I think there is a mutual I think there's a mutual expectation, maybe is the best word to use, that at the very least we would make sure we have clarified where the boundaries are, right? Where the sideboards are, what the edges are, a clear understanding of as Commissioner McGowan put it, an opportunity to calibrate our perspectives, right? For all of us to look at the same thing at the same time in the field, hopefully, and to hear what the operators, professionals see in regard to the 80% issue or the stormwater management issue or whatever the issue is that we're looking at, to hear what the operators professionals see, to hear what our COGCC staff professionals see, and to have that conversation about the thing at the same time so we can all hear the potential differences and hope to minimize those differences, right? Hope to at least resolve the perceptions to a mutual perception would be a huge goal that I think is attainable, or at least movement toward that is attainable. I think that's the starting point. Guidance documents, policy changes, potential rule changes. I don't know. I think the outcomes are not limited. But I think the objective going in is to try and resolve this potential difference in perception of, I don't see anything wrong here, versus this is not right? This is awful, right? Or, you know, to try to use sort of hyperbolic language a little. So I think that's the starting point, at least for me. And I think from the conversations I've had with the operators, they look forward to that opportunity as well, and think that there will be a good outcome from just that exercise alone. But I don't expect it to stop there.
I think predictability and consistency are the two terms that I hear over and over in my discussions with various operators. And I suspect that the feeling is probably similar from the EPSs and inspectors from the COGCC. And to speak a little more to Scott's point, I think having a dialogue between the the stakeholders and interested parties on both sides is just going to identify those opportunities for improvement and better understanding on both sides.
Follow up, Commissioner Messmer?
No, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the responses, and it does seem like there's an opportunity here to have that discussion, to really have both sides really share where they're at and what some of the issues are, and flesh those out, and then determine what steps need to be taken. And it's probably a topic by topic resolution or work product, depending on what those issues are. And so I think this is a good approach.
So, Mr. Cuthbertson and Mr. Hines, I think the direction that I want to kind of summarize here, but I think the direction that you're getting is good job. A couple of minor edits, make issues, turn that into sort of initial issues to be evolving, something like that. Reframe the topsoil language so that it's more neutral. It's not using against one or another. And then I would add a final bullet after meetings to be outcome. And you might sub-bullet that with, first to be determined, but the potential outcomes include additional guidance or policy role adjustments, and that will evolve as well as discussions continue to take place. Looking to my fellow commissioners, does that sound about right in terms of, initial guidance to the document that we saw before us? Commissioner Cross, Commissioner Ackerman, did either of you have anything? Commissioner Ackerman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry to jump in late after that succinct summary, and I agree with it. Thank you for summarizing. Certainly agree with further development of issues, and hopefully the first part of the first meeting will be talking about vetting that list of issues and getting through that, and adding anything that needs to be added and modifying anything that needs to be modified. But I did have a question, Deputy Director Cuthbertson, about participants. I think on our list of participants, we've got COGCC and COGA members. And just wanted to ask a question about the nature of the meetings themselves. One of the issues associated with BLM. There are soil conservation issues, stormwater management that may be of interest to, towns and municipalities and others. Can you talk about, other potential attendees of this meeting? Is it a closed meeting, or will other interested parties be able to attend these meetings as they go forward?
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. Our perspective is that, and I'm going to let Mr. Hines maybe augment my response, but we have very much deferred to the West Slope operators to set the stage, as it were. I feel like that, from the hearing in January and from the conversations that we'd had before that and since that it was important for them to pick the issues and to identify the participants, to open it up to whoever they wanted to join. I think if we identify somebody who we think is important to join, we certainly, I think, have the ability to make that invitation as well. But largely, we're looking to Chris and to his consortium to help facilitate organizing the meetings, identifying the order of issues that they would like to address, the venue for the meeting. Is it in a conference room? Is it at a facility? We certainly will be putting, adding our input to that, but we very much are looking to Chris and the West Slope operators to lead that effort.
My understanding is that this effort really was a desire by the operators in Western Colorado to have a better understanding of sort of the regulatory framework that they were experiencing through the EPSs and inspectors. But I can see no reason why a more broad discussion and stakeholder involvement in general would be problematic. We're certainly willing to open or turn over any rocks that we need to make this effort as productive as possible.
Thank you for those responses. I really appreciate that. And to be clear, I'm talking a little bit about the difference between, actual task force participants and potential attendees. I'm not intending to suggest other participants other than those that have been identified, but perhaps leave the door open for other attendees as needed, as Mr. Hines has pointed out. So appreciate those responses. Thank you.
And I guess I would just add, Commissioner Ackerman, my experience in meeting with the West Slope operators is they are very open. They're very open to whoever wants to attend, within the framework of an operational setting, an operational perspective. But that's also why we feel like it's important for them to have that control, because there are some limitations in terms of, what can be accommodated in all the venues. And I appreciate that there may be people who would love to participate in the conversation that may feel excluded, and I'm not sure how to get around that, other than to try to make sure that we are faithful to fully report back to the commission in public hearing the content and context of those conversations and the outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, now that Commissioner Ackerman has brought this up, I'm wondering if we could, I just quickly glanced at the document again. I want to make sure I didn't miss something. I think for the stormwater management piece, participation from CDPHE is important, because I think we kind of have delegated authority and we're implementing their stormwater management rules. I'm thinking, if I'm wrong, Mr. Cuthbertson, can you let me know? I think it'd be really important to have CDPHE as part of that conversation, especially if we're going to talk about training later on.
Thank you. We recognize that CDPHE is the agency who, we may mutually look to help us resolve our differences of perspective. I think it's helpful if we start without them, honestly, because it just helps maintain this relationship that we're trying to build between our administrative efforts and our administrative community, recognizing that CDPHE is the go-to agency to look to perhaps resolve an otherwise unresolvable conflict of interest. I just am sensitive to us making sure we make most of the opportunity to give this a chance to improve our relationship with our administrative community without the additional complexities of a third agency. But we absolutely recognize that they certainly are interested specifically in the stormwater issue, and we'll be watching for ways to involve them.
And if I can add to that, Commissioner McGowan, I see, my role in this as being a facilitator of discussions and looking for ways to resolve any misunderstandings. And, CDPHE, relative to the stormwater discussions, I think is an obvious resource to reach out to when there are those points of impasse or lack of clarity. So I think, extending requests for feedback to outside parties is going to be just kind of a natural extension of this effort.
Great, I think that's helpful. I just want to make sure we don't get to the end of the path and discover that CDPHE is not okay with something that we might have come up with as part of this.
That would be pretty counterproductive.
That would be pretty bad.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, that might be a lose-lose.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Cross.
I apologize. It's taken my computer a minute to unmute, but thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this presentation today. I think this is very helpful and a good step forward, recognizing that there are a lot of unique circumstances on the western slope, and trying to work through some of these issues. And Deputy Director, I appreciate your comments there about trying to make sure that we're working with our specific administrative purpose here and trying to increase our goals of transparency and working with stakeholders and operators. And I agree with the comments that previous commissioners made. I like the idea of keeping this open. I also like the idea of making sure that it's not too open. We don't want to try and encourage us to be sort of a referendum on rulemaking and that kind of stuff and get public comments that are going to detract from the purpose of which this was originally intended to be. So no, I do appreciate that. And I guess I'll sort of initially start off by saying, as we do look to a commissioner to potentially work on this, I know that you have a comment in there that it would presumably be a commissioner present at the January 2022 hearing. Obviously that was before my appointment, but I would be interested in potentially serving as the appointed commissioner on that.
Yeah, Commissioner Cross, thank you for that. What I was going to suggest in terms of figuring out the appointed commissioner is we're in the process of sort of designating out to ourselves various action items or additional items. And I thought maybe it might make sense for the five of us to sort of think through that. And then as we sort of delegate other duties, this would be one of those delegatable duties, and we could figure out who's the appropriate person. I don't know that we need to make a determination, just yet today, but I would look to Deputy Director Cuthbertson and Mr. Hines if you would allow us to take another week or two to sort of figure that out, if that would be okay.
Absolutely fine with me.
Okay, I'm seeing nodding of heads up and
Makes
down.
sense to me.
That makes sense, commissioners. We'll put that on our list of delegatable duties to ourselves and figure that out along with other things. All right, further reflection from commissioners to what's been presented to us. All right, I'm not saying anything further. Thank you both for the presentation, for the work that's been done to date on the topic. We do appreciate it. It's with the suggestions that I itemized and as others may have itemized, we think this is in concert with the direction from the commission from the January meeting, and we look forward to productive task force. So go forth and task.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, moving forward with our docket today, we had one other item that is docket number 170500289. It is the annual review by the commission of the 4,800 acre URU, Unconventional Resource Unit, established in Commission Order 535827. Hearings Manager Amaro, are we going to bring up? There we go. I see the.
We are bringing them in.
Up.
Good morning, commissioners. Just give us a moment. I'll make sure our panel is in. Wonderful. I think we've got everyone, and we do have a PowerPoint. So if you could give us just a moment, we're going to get that up on the screen before we begin our presentation. Let's see. So I've lost my, there we go. Lost my screen there for a moment. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes. We can.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, good morning, commissioners. My name is Kelsey Wazelinski. I'm with Jost Energy Law, and with Jamie Jost, we represent PDC Energy in the Pierce Unconventional Resource Unit, or URU, before you today for annual review. The Pierce URU Order 535827 requires that the URU be set for review by the Commission annually. And notably, no action is required by the Commission today as part of this review. The approximate 4,800 acre Pierce URU was established by Great Western Operating Company on June 12, 2017. Great Western has been providing annual updates to the Commission through 2021 and PDC has since acquired the assets of Great Western. With me today from PDC is Tyler Sims, who's the land advisor, Tony Williams, the senior development geologist, and Wes Ensign, who's the manager of planning and development. These three representatives from PDC will be presenting the annual update today, and Ali Oda, who's the regulatory analyst for PDC, will also be available for questions. And before I turn it over to the my PDC team, I would like to provide a brief background of URUs. So Jane Stanzik presented a great summary of URUs to the commission last year, and I recognize that several commissioners did not benefit from that presentation, so we have just a few slides from Ms. Stanzik's presentation to serve as a background. URUs have been recognized as an important tool by the COGCC. They are focused on downhole mineral development to protect mineral owners. The URUs that have been formed in Colorado were established primarily to protect mineral owners in the development of unconventional resources and to provide flexibility to operators to develop a resource as the operator's technical understanding of the subsurface resource grew. Next slide, please. A URU can be considered a hybrid between a DSU and a state unit. The Pierce URU order allows for the appropriate number of horizontal wells to effectively and efficiently drain the reservoir. The Pierce URU order also provides that the URU will be governed by a unit agreement and a unit operating agreement. Next slide, please. Finally, this slide provides a summary of the comparison between DSUs, state units, and URUs. I won't delve into the details here, but did want to highlight again that the Pierce URU is approved for an appropriate number of horizontal wells to effectively and efficiently drain the reservoir. It authorizes 6 new pads for development of the unit and is governed by a unit agreement and unit operating agreement. And with that brief summary, I will turn it over to Tyler Sims.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you, Kelsey. Again, I'm Tyler Sims, land advisor for PDC Energy, and I'm going to continue our presentation with a brief walkthrough of the history of the Pierce Unconventional Resource Unit to date. The unit was formed again by COGC order in June of 2017, and the unit was applied for actually by Great Western Operating Company, which was recently acquired by PDC Energy in May of this year. The unit covers 4,800 acres, of which PDC owns an 88% working interest. Letters of support for the URU were received by additional working interest owners Edge Energy and Kerr McGee at the time that the URU had been formed. The order establishing the Pierce URU requires this annual review by the commission, and as Kelsey already indicated, the URU was established in accordance with existing COGC rules and regulations. To help orient everyone, the Pierce URU is about 9 miles north of Greeley, Colorado. This slide represents PDC's lease position within the URU, the boundary of the URU being designated by the dark blue polygon on this map. Noteworthy here are also the existing wells within the URU, which I'll provide more detail regarding on the following slide. Here we have an overview of the lifespan to date of our Pierce URU. And you can see as we move from left to right, the major milestones that are highlighted. After our initial formation of the URU, the first well was drilled in April 2019. This well being the TNM DE 33173HC. This well was completed in July of the same year. And shortly after completion of the TNM well, gas processing came online in support of the URU. In May of 2021, the second well in the URU was drilled, this being the Riemann DE 33074HC. And that well was completed in June of the same year. Both the TNM and Riemann wells are completed in and currently produced from the Codell formation. And with this, I'm going to hand off to Tony Williams and Wes Ensign to speak to the last portion of this timeline, which is going to be our ongoing evaluation of work to date and our future development strategy following PDC's acquisition of the URU.
Thank you, Tyler. Good morning, commissioners and panelists. My name is Tony Williams, and we'll talk a little bit about the geology in reference to what's going on in the surface. If you look at this image to the right and center of the page, you'll see the blue square. That represents the URU boundary. You can also see the 2 wells on the left side of the picture that go from north to south. Those are the wells that have been previously drilled. there's an additional well that drills off the screen to the north. If you take note of the colors of this image, that's the structure map in the background. That structure map represents the top of the Niobrara Formation. The hot colors in this case are shallower formation, and the cool colors, the greens, are deeper formation. The reason why I illustrate that is you can see there's a large structure here. This structure has been present and noted for a long time by Dr. Weimer and Sonnenberg, and they published several times in the Colorado Geological Survey. This is a large structure that crosses the entire basin. In this case, it crosses the south side of where we're trying to develop. The offset of the structure is approximately 250 feet. So I bring these points up so you can understand why we plan the wells we did in accordance to the geologic hazards that we have in the subsurface. So I'll turn the time over to Wes to talk a little bit more about what you can see on here, these arrows, which are our well plans, and why and where we plan those. Wes is our planning and development manager.
Thanks, Tony. And also, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the time. Yeah, so I'll just do a quick overview of where we're headed next. So after evaluating the production on the existing Riemann and T&M wells, which are all in the Codell Formation, we also are planning to evaluate the productivity and reservoir quality of the Niobrara in this acreage. So due to the complex geology that Tony just mentioned, we're planning to evaluate the Niobrara in various phases on either side of the structure. So with that said, we plan to submit 4 to 8 well permits within the next 12 months. These will be drilling from the existing Riemann and T&M surface locations where there are no residential building units within 2,000 feet. As we continue to evaluate the production and hopefully new production from these wells, we'll have a much better understanding of how we would like to develop the remaining acreage within the URU on the east side. So in this later phase of development, we'll evaluate the acreage on the east side of the URU and the south side of the structure, and as well as any suitable surface locations. Any suitable surface locations identified within the development will be filed in accordance with all of the current OGDP requirements and COGCC and with the COGCC and local governments. So with that, this concludes our update for the URU, and we're open for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, questions for the panel? Well, you must have done a really good job because I'm not seeing any questions at this time. So Ms. Wozlinki, thank you very much for the update. As you noted, for the record, there's no action necessary for commissioners at this time. We'll look forward to continued updates as this development continues forward.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being with us. That, commissioners, does take care of the action items that was on our agenda for today. Does anyone have anything else? Seeing none, we would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'll take one of those as a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.